The One Where Voldemort Receives a Howler by Robottko. Though flames burned brightly in the sconces on the walls, they barely staved off the gloom that had settled through the halls of Malfoy Manor since the Dark Lord had arrived. Once bright and opulent, the manor now felt like a shell of its former self. It wouldn't be out of place in one of those muggle-haunted houses that Draco had heard about. Best not think about muggles here, Draco thought to himself as he strolled along the corridor towards the manor's great hall. You never know who could be listening in. If he was lucky, it would be the Dark Lord. Draco was merely a speck of dirt as far as the Dark Lord was aware, and after he had failed to kill Dumbledore, Draco had only proven himself useless. No, the Dark Lord probably wouldn't care too much if stray thoughts of muggle customs flitted through Draco's mind. His Aunt Bellatrix, however. Draco shuddered, shutting down the thought as he entered the manor's great hall. Once a grand space used for hosting Christmas balls, the room was now used as a meeting location for the Dark Lord and his Death Eaters. Finding his spot next to Father and Mother, Draco sat down, staring resolutely ahead of himself. It was always best not to attract the attention of anyone in the room, even those that his father once considered friends. They had proved time and time again that they would do anything to get in the Dark Lord's good graces, even stab one another in the back. The Dark Lord swept in, making an already quiet room go deathly silent. Draco was positive that Father stopped breathing entirely, lest he be too loud. "My friends," the Dark Lord sat at the head of the table, his high, cold voice like ice to Draco's heart. "I confess myself disappointed." "With what, my lord?" Aunt Bellatrix asked immediately, immune to whatever power the Dark Lord had that made Draco want to run and hide. "Harry Potter." Draco winced slightly, keeping his head down as the Dark Lord's red eyes swept the room. "How is it that a child and his two friends have managed to elude you this entire time?" "They're eluding you too," Draco thought to himself before locking down his thoughts once more. He threw a panicked glance at the Dark Lord, but he didn't seem to have caught Draco's thoughts. My lord," one of the Death Eaters blubbered. Draco couldn't be bothered to learn his name. We're trying, but they're—" "Silenzio!" The Dark Lord waved his wand at the man flippantly, clearly bored with his excuses. "If I had known that you could be bested by a few Hogwarts students, I wouldn't have been so merciful with you and your family, Selwyn." "Maybe we should have recruited more Hogwarts students instead," Aunt Bellatrix sneered. "Of course, maybe they would have turned out as cowardly as my nephew here." Draco shrank back into his seat, his face heating with embarrassment and fear. Now, Bella," the Dark Lord said. "At least Draco has tried to help, which is better than what can be said about others." The Dark Lord glanced around the room, his red eyes glinting. It was never a good sign when he looked like that. He opened his mouth, possibly to curse, but he never got that far. A loud bang echoed through the room, causing everyone to jump. Draco could feel the manor's magic twist as the wards let something through. It was baffling, as it shouldn't have been possible for anything to pass the manor's wards that hadn't already been approved, let alone the extra wards that the Dark Lord himself added. But sure enough, an owl flew through the room, skimming over the table before dropping a red envelope in front of the Dark Lord. For the first time, the Dark Lord looked shocked, allowing the owl to leave the manor in the same ward-twisting manner without so much as glancing at it. Instead, he observed the envelope, picking it up in a way that looked almost nervous, if Draco didn't know any better. "My lord," Aunt Bellatrix said hesitantly, "is that—" "A howler," the Dark Lord said, turning the envelope that had started smoking. Draco could see that the name Tom Riddle written across the front in a familiar, messy scrawl. "There are a lot of people who would wish to send me one, of course. But how is it possible?" My lord," Father stuttered, looking terrified. Our wards should not have let this through." "They should have been stronger," the Dark Lord agreed, his voice sounding calm, but his eyes looking murderous. "But this letter bypassed my own wards." The letter was smoking heavily now, shaking hard enough that the Dark Lord had to drop it on the table. "Should we?" There is no way to stop it from delivering its message, the Dark Lord interrupted Dolhov, causing the man to shrink into himself. And even if there was, I'm curious. Curious? Mother said softly. As to who would be so bold as to send me a Howler, the Dark Lord said. It was at that moment that the Howler practically exploded, the red envelope flying open as the wall sconces and chandeliers rattle with the voice. Tom Marvolo Riddle, the voice boomed, making Draco choke. That was Potter's voice. Is that? How could he? No way. The Death Eaters whispered amongst themselves, frantically confirming to each other that Potter had sent the Dark Lord a Howler. Draco, Father muttered to Draco under his breath. Is that... Yeah, Draco confirmed, just as soft. That's Potter. How dare you take over the ministry, the Howler continued. Though Potter's voice was loud, he sounded more amused than angry. I am absolutely disgusted. Was Potter making fun of the Dark Lord? Draco wondered to himself, unable to look away from the red envelope hovering in front of them. Cornelius Fudge is now facing an inquiry at work, and it's entirely your fault. Draco coughed, trying to cover an amused snort as he realised why the rant sounded so familiar. Weasley had gotten the same letter back in their second year, and Draco remembered that morning fondly. If you stick your nose out of line again, we'll bring you straight to Azkaban. There was a snort of laughter that echoed from the Howler that sounded suspiciously like Ron Weasley, and Draco was immediately grateful for it, as it covered up his own involuntary laughter. Oh, and Snape, dear, the Howler continued, syrupy sweet. Congratulations on making headmaster. Ron, Hermione and I are so proud. With that, the Howler burned itself up, leaving just a small pile of ash in front of the Dark Lord. The Death Eaters eyed the Dark Lord warily, horror and badly concealed amusement on their faces as they waited to see just how furious he would be. Very well, Harry Potter, the Dark Lord said, vanishing the dust with a wave of his hand. I entertained the idea that your death would be painless, but I can see that is no longer an option. The Dark Lord rose from his chair, glaring down at the table at everyone. Find him and make it quick, or I shall practice my technique on you. Draco scattered with the rest of the Death Eaters, planning to spend the rest of the evening in his room instead of looking for Potter. And if deep down he hoped that Potter eluded the Dark Lord, well, that was no one's business but his own. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Have a lovely rest of your day.